Now that we have our project set up, we have Claude Code set up, and we have Git set up, I'm now going to ask Claude Code to help us set up the backend directory of our project. I need your help setting up the backend directory for this project. It's going to be a Python Django application with a single app to start. Make the first app called Scheduler. Make sure you do some research on the internet to use the latest stable version of Django. Also, please create a requirements.txt file. Please don't do anything else unnecessary or out of the scope that I've given you. So, because these AIs are trained to do what they think is best for you, they sometimes go outside of the scope of what you've asked them to do, and they do too much. But all that I've asked the AI to do is help us set up the back-end infrastructure for this project and create a requirements.txt file. So that's all that I wanted to do, and I just nudge it in that direction by making sure that it knows that's all I want it to do and nothing else. Now, while this runs, I'll explain a couple things. So Python is the programming language that we're going to write the code that represents the backend. Remember, the backend is the brain of this project. But Django is the framework that uses Python to help organize all of the code in the backend and organize how the code interacts with the database. Django also does a whole lot more. It's a very robust and it's most importantly a very old package that runs inside of Python or runs with Python. I say it's important that it's old because that means that there's a lot of code out there that the AIs were trained on to write Python code in Django, which means they're really good at it. So here we can see it's asking, can I do the web search Django latest stable version 2025? And I'm going to say yes, and don't ask again for web search commands. That's saying, don't ask me whenever you want to do web search on your own. So I'll say yes, and it's going out and finding the latest stable version of Django. So Python is the language, Django is the package that is inside of Python that allows us to do a bunch of stuff in the back end of the application. Because Django is a software package, there are versions of it, and the most stable version is the version that all of the developers that help contribute to the development of Django say, hey, this one is the one that you can run your business on effectively. So this is asking me, can I go to the back end and install Django? I'm going to click yes, not yes, and don't ask me again because I don't want it to install Django or any other package unless I tell it. And actually, what I'm going to do is say, first things first, I actually need you to set up a Python virtual environment in the back end and then start making requests to install different packages inside of that virtual environment. So that's a step that I actually forgot. A virtual environment is, instead of installing the package Django directly on my computer, we're actually going to install it inside of a special folder inside of the back end that is called a virtual environment. It's a way of keeping the code that is specific to this project very separate from all of the other code in other projects. So I'll just tell it to run this command, go to the back end, and create the virtual environment. And then we should see the virtual environment folder pop up here underneath the back end. So it hit an error because of the Python version that I have on my personal computer. It's now asking, can I run Python 3, create virtual environment, and I'll click yes, and now it should work. So this is the beauty of Claude Code, is that I don't really need to know what this error is. It knows, hey, I should now run Python 3 instead of just Python, and it creates this virtual environment for us. Okay, now it's saying, can I run this command that says activate the virtual environment and install Django 5.2.6? And I'm going to say yes. So it keeps running into some errors. I think it's because it's not inside of the correct folder, and it's asking to list the folders inside of this project so that it can familiarize itself with where it should be running these commands at. Now that it understands, it's running the command and it's installing Django. Yes, I want it to proceed. Okay. we can see this grayed out text here, and the sparkling orange text here means that there's a process running on our computer that Claude Code initiated with this command here. And then the sparkling orange text down here just means it's thinking or it's waiting for that process to complete. Okay, so it ran into an error. Let's see what it says. It says the installation timed out. Let me try installing Django without specifying the exact version, which will get the latest stable version. So again, this is the beauty of using AI, is baked into Claude Code's brain is, oh, I understand what the issue was. I'm just going to fix it myself. And the issue was something about the command timing out. So it knows how to fix that, and it's going to run the same command without specifying the version, because without specifying the version, we will automatically get the version of Django that is the latest stable version. Okay, it updated us and said, perfect, Django 5.2.6 installed successfully. Now let me create the Django project. And it's asking me if it can run this command that is Django admin start project AI scheduler project. This is asking, can I run the command to create the Django project inside of the back end using the Django software that we just installed? And I'm going to say yes. That error was because it wasn't inside of the correct folder. This should work this time. Nice. And we can see that this manage.py was created and this AI scheduler project was created. And now it's going to create this scheduler app, which I will explain in just a second. Okay, it creates the scheduler app, and now it's going to create a requirements.txt file. Great, we can see all of that was done. Now, Claude Code might get a little bit ahead of itself and try to commit this code. It didn't. Awesome. Okay, so it says Django backend setup complete. Here's what I created, virtual environment, which we can see in this VENV here. The Django project, which we can see here in the AI scheduler project with some important files inside of it, which we'll get to eventually. And then it created the app called scheduler with some important files in it that we will get to. And then finally, the requirements.txt. You can think of the requirements.txt file as the place that all of the important software that the backend runs on, where all of those different versions are saved. That's really important because once we get the code to work, the code is working with these specific versions of Django and other packages that we'll use to run the back end. Sometimes there are what's called conflicts where your code won't run because there's a conflict between one package and another. So this requirements.txt with the equals and then the specific version number is extremely important to make sure that your code runs for a very long time without any conflicts between the packages that you install. And then just to be clear, we have the requirements.txt file inside of the backend directory, and the front end directory is empty right now. So last thing is, now that we have the Django application set up, in the back end, we'll tell Claude Code to commit this to our local and remote Git repositories. Next, I want you to commit all of the code for the new files and the changes we made to existing files to the local and remote master branches on Git. So it's running some commands to get the status, to get the difference, to figure out what the difference is, and then now it's adding all the code, and now it's writing the commit message, and it's staging all of these files. I'm going to say yes. Let me show you what this looks like inside of the source control. So I don't know if you saw that little blink that just happened, but these were all plus signs here, and now they're all minus signs. All of these changes are now ready to be committed. But I noticed something that we might not want. So before I click yes to allow it to commit this code, I'm going to tell Claude Code to do something else. So I don't think we want to commit all of the files inside of our virtual environment. Can you please create the appropriate git ignore file for us in this project so that only the correct files are committed to our repositories? So you see how this says 5,658 files? That threw off a red flag in my head that that's way too many files. And it says, you're absolutely right, we should create a .gitignore file to exclude the virtual environment and other generated files. Let me create a proper .gitignore file. So let's go over here to our File Explorer, and we can see that it says, do you want to make this edit to the .gitignore file? And I'm going to say yes. Okay, and then at the very root of our project, at the same level as the .claude backend and front-end folders, we have this new file called gitignore. So gitignore is like a flag that says to the Git package that we installed, that says, hey, don't commit all of these files. And we can see like lib / parts / let me find a good one. Log *log means don't commit any files that are log files. This just means don't muddy up all of the code that's stored in Git and in GitHub with files that aren't 100% necessary for the program to run. They're necessary for the program to run locally on our computer, but they're not necessary to run if you were to give this file and this program to somebody else. Okay, so now it says, now when you commit, only the essential source code and configuration files will be included, not virtual environment or generated files, which is exactly what we wanted. Now, there's a little bit of a oddity here that happens with Cursor. Even though all of the files in the virtual environment folder have been added to the gitignore file, it's still showing up as green, which means it will be committed. But if we go back over here, it's still showing 5,500 or 658. Let's see if I do refresh. Okay, sometimes this happens. I'm going to just quit Cursor and open it back up again and see if this changes. Yeah, there's still that many files. Let's see. We have to reinitialize Claude code. And then now that Claude is open, I'm going to go to resume. And then this is the one that we were just on. So now I'm back inside that conversation. I did that by doing /resume. And I'm going to say, inside the source control panel of my IDE, I can still see there are 5,658 files that will be committed if we run the commit commands. Can you please use various git commands to figure out why this is the case? I don't believe all 5,658 files need to be committed. I could be wrong, but I want you to verify. Please run as many commands as you need to get to the bottom of this. So now it's saying you're absolutely right, 5,658 files is way too many. Let's investigate what's happening with Git and why the gitignore isn't working as expected. And it created a to-do list. Now it's running various git then something commands, and it says, I can see the problem. The files are already staged, added to Git. That's the problem. Okay, let's go back up here. And I could just hit this unstage all changes, but it looks like Claude Code will do all of that for us. So we'll allow it to run git reset, and you can see that that just changed up here, and we now only have 16 files. So the problem was that we had all of those files, all 5,658 of those files already checked with a plus sign, and the minus sign was here. That means they were staged or ready to be committed. I'll explain later what that feature is for and why it's useful, but Claude Code fixed this for us. Okay, so then we'll click add gitignore. You can see that the stage change is to add gitignore, and it's going to start adding various files for us to our stage. It's looking for status, and then it's asking if it can add these files. Yep, nice. Okay, so it fixed the issue that we were seeing with all those files. Now all of these files are staged, which means they're ready to be saved. Okay, now we have only 16 files staged for commit instead of 5,658. The virtual environment, cache files, and other generated files are now properly ignored. Your IDE should now show. Okay, yes it does. Commit to local and remote. Git master branches. Okay, that master branch, we can see down here, there's this master indicator. That just means that we're on the master branch of Git in this project. We can get to why that's important later, but you can think of it like creating a branch allows you to create and save your code to different versions of your code. So let's say you wanted to develop a feature, but you didn't want to have it on the master branch of your code, or you wanted to have your development code separate from your code that was running for other people to use. You create branches inside of Git to create different versions of your code so that you can test and create different features and do different things without affecting the master or other branches of your code. So this is just asking us, can we commit this? And I'll say yes. So now those are all committed to local, which we can see here, local with this little target, but the origin/master with this little cloud, that is one commit, one save spot behind where we currently are. So it's now asking, can we push the code that is locally committed to master out in the cloud on GitHub? And I'll say yes. And then you should see this update over here. And there it goes. And it says done, successfully committed 16 files to both local and remote master branches. The commit includes the Django backend setup, scheduler app, and proper git ignore file. Awesome. Okay, now the foundation of the backend is all set up. We can ignore the fact that this virtual environment is still showing up green with this little green dot. That will go away with a simple reset of cursor.